Gaze reading where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen, cause we're spoiler free. Gaze reading, from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze reading.
Hello and welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and welcome back to those of you who have been here before, and I'm very happy to have you if you are new to Gaze Reading. Today we have an insanely epic episode. It is our biggest, it is our longest, it is the most insane episode I've ever done of Gaze Reading yet, and that is because it is Wicked Week. Whew, can't believe it. I know so many people hold both Wicked and the Story of the Wizard of Oz very near and dear to their heart. And so I am thrilled that on today's episode, I have the fantastic Gregory Maguire, the author of the original novel, Wicked. I have Eric Williams, host of That's a Gay Ass podcast. He and I talk about some of our favorite moments from the musical. And my very first guest gay icon, the one and only Eden Espinosa, the original standby for Elphaba on Broadway. All of their bios are in the show notes. You can watch this episode and a bunch of our other episodes over on YouTube. You could subscribe to that channel. The link to that is in our link tree and also in the show notes. Also, if you could like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, it makes it so much easier for other folks to find Gaze Reading. And if you are so inclined, leave us a 5-star review. And I highly recommend following us on social media. We're on Instagram at Gaze Reading. Not only do we do giveaways all the time, but for this episode, this week, we are giving away 3 copies of the special edition hardcover version of Wicked and giving away a copy of the yet to be released Elfie, the prequel to Wicked. So make sure to check that out on our Instagram page at Gaze Reading. And if you're new to us, you haven't heard this yet, I'm so thrilled to share that we're partnering with Aardvark Book Club to provide an exclusive introductory discount. New members in the USA can join today. Enter the code Gaze Reading at checkout and get their first book for only $4 and free shipping. That's aardvarkbookclub.com. Aardvark has 2 A's. And use the code Gaze Reading to get your very first box for $4. Make sure to check that out. And without further ado, welcome to Gaze Reading, Gregory Maguire. Welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, it's a real treat to be here. I'm glad this could work out. I wasn't sure for a while if my schedule was so tight. I wasn't sure we'd be able to find a place, but here we are.
Listen, thank you for squeezing me in.
Here.
I feel very nice and compact into your schedule. I feel like we could probably sit and talk forever and forever. So many pieces of your life, besides yourself, obviously, are queer coded or like queer adjacent.
Yeah, I love that phrase, queer adjacent. In fact, I used it today in an email to my husband who said, "Oh, that's a really cool phrase." I wasn't sure I had made it up, but really I did.
Not to be confused with queer Jason.
Oh, shoot.
That I made up. That's mine. Starting with knowing you as a young person loved Harriet the Spy.
Yeah.
Which I just had a terrific conversation with an author a couple of weeks ago, Ruman Alam, who it's a very big, important book for him too. And he talked about how queer the book is. And I've never actually read the book and it's on my list to buy. But
we'll have to hang up now because I can't talk to you if you don't know Harriet the Spy is a muse and will be a muse for you like Emily Dickinson and Virginia Woolf and anybody else.
I did see the movie as a young person, so I'm very familiar with the contextual importance. But I went to the bookstore the other day to buy it and they did not have it. And this is before I even knew that you were such a fan.
That's a crime. I will give me your address before the end of this show and I will mail you. I promise.
So the fact that in and of itself, very queer coded, so many picture books and children's books are written by authors who later in life came out or who were known to be gay or queer. And I know that those were a lot of your influences as well. Do you feel like you sort of lived in this tangentially queer space always?
I think I did. Now I have to say, because I've done an informal study of this. If you ask the people who are about my generation, and
Hmm.
I'm not shy about, in an Asian sort of way, I'm proud of my age. I turned 70 this year. Uh,
Happy 70th.
Thank you. A lot of people who, were born in the mid 50s and came upon Harriet the Spy when they were about 10, when it came out, 64. A lot of people, whether they were queer or not, a lot of authors took it as a working Bible. This is a manual
Mm,
about how to be a writer, how to be a creative person. And the clear coding in it only came clear to me as I got to be an adult.
mm.
One of the many people I've met who cites it as a seminal influence, if I can use that word for a lesbian, is Alison Bechdel. She loves Harriet the Spy, and she's not the only one. I'd say there are maybe 10 people I know from my age cohort of creators who said, Harriet set me on the path.
Mm,
I was very lucky compared to many people in that even though I had some sadness and sorrow in my childhood and in my upbringing, the fact is my parents appreciated writing and appreciated the creative act.
mm.
And so they were not villains that had to be vanquished in order for me to meet my dream. They weren't particularly interested in story writing, but they were interested in writing and in language.
Sure.
And so I had a leg up on a lot of people that
Mm,
way. And if I was a little sensitive, as I, began to call it when I was in 10th grade, uh, uh, I did not ever feel brutalized in my family
yeah.
about that because my family appreciated that I was demonstrating industry and I was demonstrating harnessing my imagination, and good for me, even if sometimes I was an embarrassment when guests came over.
I mean, aren't so many young children are embarrassments when the guests come over, so it's
Yeah.
not just you. Um, it's you said that, and all of a sudden, trauma jumped into my mind.
Yeah. So what happened to you, Jason, that turned you toward the microphone and making a spectacle of yourself once again?
It's so funny. I don't know that I've ever even told the story to my husband. There was a family gathering, and I was in my parents' room putting on a one-man version of Grease using the 1994 Broadway cast recording.
Right.
And I was like in the middle of dancing on the bed, and some family member walked in the room. And it was like among my most embarrassing moments as a child because I was the spectacle at the family gathering. Anyway, that just,
And
thank you for that.
you're welcome. You're welcome. There's a therapy, dispenser down at the corner. And as soon as we're done with our work here today, you should go and take care of yourself.
I actually have therapy tomorrow morning. So I'm going to make a note to remind myself to talk to him about this. So
Well,
Gregory Maguire messed me up.
I'm going to tell you something interesting because I
Well,
know
I hope so.
we're going to talk about Wicked. We're going to talk about writing. We're going to talk about being queer, and all that stuff is really interesting to me, especially the queer coding in my work, which I
Mhm.
think was even deeper, more deeply embedded in it than possibly even I was aware when
Mhm.
I was doing it. However, I've been having a really interesting conversation the last day or two, and you said you said our conversation could ramble in any direction. A friend of mine has put out a podcast, and his name is Matt Starr, and the podcast is something like the best man's ghostwriter or something like that.
Mm.
And it's about an independent writer who's about to get married himself to a woman whose job it is to do support for straight men who have to give toasts at the weddings of their best friends. And I listened to it. I listened to about three-quarters of it on a long car ride Monday, and I got thinking about my best male friends. And I'll tell you, and this the reason it's compelling to talk about to me is that I realized I'm 70. I realized something new. I've got many straight friends that I really, really like, and I
Mhm.
like spending time with. But if I'm being honest, any straight male friends I have might not be listening to the Gays Reading podcast, so I'm safe to say this. If I'm being honest, most of my straight male friends I prefer to see with their wives. I would not, unless somebody had had a trauma or something, like somebody was sick or somebody needed help.
Uh-huh.
I would not, for most straight men, I would not go out of my way to like have lunch with them or to
Mm.
see if I was passing through town. I have a lot of single gay male friends. I have a lot of married gay male friends. These are not people I dislike at all. But I didn't realize until listening to this podcast that he was not just talking about straight men, he was talking about gay men and their attachment or lack thereof to straight men as good friends.
Hmm.
Now, I do have some.
Sure.
I would call, between you and me, I would call the straight male friends that I have kind of gay adjacent. I mean, I might not say it to them to their face,
Yes.
but I they're gay adjacent to me. So
Yes.
and and uh, and I find it. I mean, it's a really interesting concept, like just how effed up are straight men,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
and in what way am I effed up? Because I find straight men kind of alarming or boring. I
They certainly
begin.
can be. No offense to any
I mean,
straight men who listen.
yeah,
The
and
three of you.
I have to say that I exclude my 3 living brothers from this
Oh.
because I would see any of my living brothers one-on-one for dinner or lunch any day of the year, and the same goes true for my nephews.
Oh.
But they have a different
It's a different
they
relationship to you.
there's a different relationship to me. It's
Yeah.
lifelong.
Right.
It doesn't need to be proven, and I don't need to prove myself. I'm like already punched into their world, whether they
Mhm.
like it or not, and I don't have to prove anything.
It's very funny that you bring this up because just last week we went on a double date with a straight couple
Yep.
and their kid and we were playing trivia, and in the middle of trivia we knew that one of them was going to have to leave with the kid to take the kid home, and it was the wife that left and the husband stayed, and that was a very interesting experience for us because we don't know him that well,
Right.
and it was the straight guy that stayed, and that was
Right.
so it was a moment that I thought about, right? It
Yeah.
it didn't just go on unnoticed.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least there were 2 of you. Now, if my husband and I are together, the intensity dissipates a great deal
Sure, sure,
because we
sure.
love each other. And my husband was married to a woman for, a long time. So it's not as if he doesn't have street cred.
So he's straight adjacent.
He is straight adjacent. Yeah. Well, I better not talk about him.
But we
But anyway,
love, we love.
but I was thinking
Fascinating.
about that when you used the word gay adjacent
Mhm.
earlier on, rather than gay Jason. I actually, that's the phrase because he's in France. I'm going to go see him. We're going to meet in Paris on Friday. And I was writing to him about
Hmm.
this aperçu that I had. And he wrote back and said, well, the same is not true for me. Most of my male friends, A, are married, and B, are straight. I mean,
Mhm.
I like the gay friends that we have together, but with only a couple exceptions, I have lunch with straight men all the time, and I think, well, you're a separate category.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I will
we're
say
all
there's one particular straight friend
yeah.
who has, like, hit me on the butt more times than any gay friend I've ever had.
I call that gay adjacent. Sorry, yes, he doesn't have to know.
He honestly would probably be honored if I said
Yeah,
that.
I know, and you're constantly turning to pick something up off the floor.
Oh, sorry. Whoops.
Yeah, yeah,
You talked a little bit earlier about you didn't I don't think you used the term traumas in your childhood, but you've certainly described your childhood as maybe plot points that have mirrored fairy tales.
right, right,
And you've also expressed that fairy tales are so easily adaptable because of how porous they are. So between your own uh for better or for worse, life experience of living through a modern fairy tale and them being so adaptable, is that sort of Was that maybe what sparked all of what became Gregory Maguire?
I think so. Of course, I was very clueless. Now, I don't know how old you are, Jason. You don't have to tell me. But the fact of the matter is, it's very hard for the younger generation of gay men and gay women to realize before Stonewall, especially if you weren't in a hot urban area like New York or DC or San Francisco or someplace, uh, how very, not just closeted one was, but how out of the universe one was. There wasn't the language and there wasn't the popular concept that the idea of an identity of being gay actually was a thing. I mean, when I first started having crushes on boys, when I first began to say, gee, I like him awful lot. Why, more than I like the girls in the class. Why is that? I knew the words. I knew the word fairy. I'm thinking of this because of your use of the word fairy tale. I knew the word fairy, and I knew it was a term that 6th grade and 8th grade boys slung at boys who weren't on the football team or boys who like to sit in at recess and draw instead of, go out and kick each other's nuts in their throats. And so I knew that it had meaning, but I didn't know it had a gendered meaning, and I didn't know it had an erotic meaning. I just thought it was behavioral. Some people like to make their bed before they go to school, and most people don't. But so I'm a bed maker. So I didn't.
Could you imagine if that's what we were called?
Yeah, real.
Are you a bed maker?
You bet, honey. Are you hospital corners like you wouldn't believe?
Right. To what degree of a bed maker are you?
Yeah,
That's
really.
so funny.
I get a new shan every 3 months. Allowance. Now, but it really is. I keep saying this, but it really is. I grew up in a very intellectual but very pious, old-fashioned Roman Catholic environment where the sense of social justice was real. We just never talked about what we were being socially just about. So people my age, if they were as clueless as I was, had to kind of really work from first principles. Well, what do I feel when this boy walks in the 12th grade journalism room and we're going to have to lean together over the pages and decide if the margins are right? Why is it that I feel like I want to inch closer to him? Why do I want our elbows to touch? What does that mean? And I now I think it's almost impossible for anybody not to know what that means. But when I was 17, I was really I was curious. I was gay curious, but I didn't have the words for being gay curious.
Sure.
And now everybody does. So back to your question about what is it that fairy tales did for me as a writer, besides being called fairy tales, which was embarrassing in and of itself.
And is probably going to be the name of your memoir, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's right. What they did was they constantly, over and over and over again, in a set of, 42 grim tales, almost everyone would begin with the youngest child or the only child or the orphan child abused in some way, having to find his or her way out in the harsh world and figure out, usually through charity, although sometimes through wits, how to survive the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And I think that I saw myself as the orphaned child who was possibly, not clever Hans, but, the dumb cluck. Sometimes the third one is a little bit addlepated. And the other 2 older boys go off to make their living and get fortunes. And the young one has, I don't know, a toaster for a pet and drags it along by the electrical cord. Just not all there up there. And I think I saw myself as that. And yet the boy with the toaster for a pet can live too. Not only he can live, he can sometimes, usually he can win the princess, which back before I was gendered was like, oh, that's cool. There wasn't any prince to win, but
I mean,
make the prince.
even that could also be a stand-in for be the star of the story.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah. But I might, as you're kind of alluding to, my mother died when I was born. That doesn't happen anymore. My mother died
Yeah.
in childbirth. She lived a few days and then she needed transfusions and they didn't take, and she died of some sort of a blood anomaly or infection or something.
Mhm.
And so I went first to an aunt and then shortly thereafter to an orphanage. And I spent my first couple of years being tended to by Catholic nuns and nurses until my father remarried and collected the family back together. So even though I don't have any memories of that,
Mhm.
it's certainly part of the what is past is prologue, part of how I think about myself. And I think that's why I identified with orphans and with the magic world that somehow allowed me to survive.
Mhm.
And the stepmother who raised me, who was anything but a wicked stepmother. In fact, in many ways, I used to joke with her when I was about 12. I said, you're both a wicked stepmother and a fairy godmother. Isn't that interesting? And she laughed because she liked literary references and she got what I was saying.
I love that. I mean, you say you don't remember a lot of it, but one could imagine, and again, I'm not a therapist. Maybe I could ask mine tomorrow on your behalf.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's coming out in your books, right? Like these deep seated, maybe not repressed, but these things that live inside of you are coming out through the things that you're writing.
Well, one of the things I noticed, actually, I have to confess, I'm a bear of very little brain, even if I'm loquacious, as they call it, as
You
kids
are the
call
third one.
it. Somebody else pointed out to me that in my first 20 books, let's say some for children, some for adults, there is never a story that starts with two intact parents and a happy child.
Mm.
One parent is usually missing or dead, and more often than not, it's the mother. And it's almost as if in the story taking machinery of my mind, I can't even see anything worth talking about if there isn't a child who has to survive the death of the parent. It's like that's the prerequisite of a story. You need once upon a time, you need a dead mother. Let's go. Boom, we're off to the races.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's
That's
it.
the recipe.
That's what. Now, of course, Harriet the Spy had two parents, which you will find out when you get the package I'm about to mail to you. But they were New Yorkers and they were somewhat narcissistic.
Yeah.
So, in a way, she was orphaned
Absent.
too,
Yeah,
and she was
yeah.
raised by her governess. Really,
Mhm. Well, it's funny thinking about this and unpacking this. I have said many times, all I want is to get Rosie O'Donnell on this podcast. And Rosie, of course, played that nanny in the
that's
movie.
right.
And I
Right.
do think there is an element of me being raised by her, coming home from school and watching the Rosie O'Donnell show every day. And that being an introduction growing up in Florida to New York and to theater and to Broadway and to, what became my career for over a decade.
Oh
So
gosh, I love that.
in a way, there is an element of Harriet and me too.
Well, if you ever get her, tell her I said hi.
I,
Because we went to see Wicked together. I met her at a party in Boston when Wicked had been running for about 5 years. And she said, "Oh, you wrote Wicked. I love that show. I'd like to see it again." And I said, "Well, guess what? I can get tickets." And so she gave me her email address or her
her assistant
assistant's
or
address.
whoever. Yeah.
And I wrote and knew 2.5 weeks later, I was down in New York and I met her. We went to a green room where the VIPs go because they don't want to go into the auditorium until right before curtain so that they don't get mobbed too much. And I got to see what it was like to be gay adjacent to Rosie O'Donnell, because we appeared at the edge of the central sort of corridor
Mhm.
that separates the lower seats from the upper seats at the Gershwin Theater in New York, and just paused there. I'd say we were only 90 seconds from curtain, and I could see heads swivel, 1,700 people, and then I could hear the murmur of recognition and identification ripple out from her, and everybody was so attentive to her, and I was like this velvet ambulatory theater bolster, like rolling along beside her,
Mhm.
baloopa or something. We sat down. She sang through almost the whole show. And I thought, well, frankly, I don't think that's kosher, but she was Rosie O'Donnell and she was my guest. So I couldn't really say, shut up. We're ruining it for everybody. And nobody told her to shut up either. So along comes the final number at the bottom of that one, Defying Gravity. And the witch goes up and she's getting ready for her yodel. And Rosie's getting ready for her yodel too. And I grab Rosie by the forearm and I say, this is the longest first act in the history of theater. And everybody rushes for the bathroom. As soon as the lights go black, we are running out the aisle before anybody else. So that's what happened. Black, run. We dash up the aisle. We get out the door. We fall down the escalator, and we find ourselves in a bar across the street where we skip back to, because we've both seen it many times, and we talk politics and child rearing for the rest of the evening. So I don't know whether she'll remember that.
So once this episode airs, I'll send it to her and I'll say, Gregory says hello, and you should also be on the podcast. Yeah, oh, that's such a good story. Of course,
she has a beautiful voice. If you're going to send this to her, I have to say, she has a beautiful voice, and she only harmonized perfectly with Kristen and Adina. Actually, who were probably not in the roles at that point.
That's so funny. See, I told you we would talk about things you don't typically talk about on this show.
That's true. I don't think I've told that story to too many people.
Okay, so you're a big reader. Fairy tales have been deep in your life, and while someone might not have whispered, "Are you a bed maker?" people might have whispered, "Are you a friend of Dorothy's?"
Yes, and they did.
Uh-huh.
And when they did, I did not know what that meant. I really. Sometimes I see bumper stickers, friends of Dorothy, and I really, I was clueless. I mean, I have many years of higher education, and I was nonetheless clueless. Yeah. And I thought, oh, somebody else who likes the Wizard of Oz. Something I do. Oh, nice. Yes. And frankly, Wicked came out almost 30 years ago. It came out in 1995. So The Advocate interviewed me the year it came out and asked me about how the gayness of the Wizard of Oz had attracted me, and as a child and as an artist, to use this material for my own work. And I didn't know what they were talking about. I said, what do you mean the gayness of it? I mean, now I do, because I actually can learn. I learn slowly, but I can learn. But at the time, and they called
you finally plugged your toaster in.
I finally did. And then I make some toast. And they called me disingenuous, I think, in the magazine. But I was not being disingenuous. They just didn't understand how possible it was to be so very clueless. And I was very clueless. I mean, I was gay. I knew I was gay at that point, but I didn't see the social implications of that film until after Wicked came out.
Yeah.
But then Wicked is filled with it too. I did know I wanted there to be gay content in Oz, because I thought, I want this place to be so real that it has to have people of faith in it, and people of different faiths. And it has to have people who are sick, and it has to have people who are mean, and it has to have people who have same-sex preferences. I want the magic world to be as real as our world, with all its complications, so that if there's anything we can learn from reading my story, we can imagine that it is importable into the world we come back to when we close the last page of the novel.
Yeah. To go back to Wizard of Oz for a second, while you might not have seen it as queer coded, there were still things, whether you realized or not, that were relatable to you. There were elements that, you know what I mean? So sure, it might not have been a direct connection. So it just perhaps wasn't at top of mind. Not only is it the whole friend of Dorothy queer codedness of the Wizard of Oz, but there's also a history of gay men and our affinity and relationships to villains.
To villains and to Judy Garland. All of that went meow, meow,
no,
meow.
Right, and the villain, of course.
I was just sitting on my bed playing with my toaster.
As long as you're not near water.
Yeah, yeah. Don't splash me. But, it's funny because I was at a conference on last Thursday in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mhm.
This conference was a Wizard of Oz conference. And when I went out to lunch one day with a straight woman, and we talked about our love for the Wizard of Oz, I asked her, what moment in that film is the moment that made you feel the most, whether it was terror or joy or satisfaction or relief? What was the moment of deepest feeling for you when you were little and you watched that movie? And she thought about it and she said, the moment that Dorothy pushes open the door and Technicolor Oz, Technicolor Munchkinland is out there. Well, that wasn't mine, partly because I didn't see the movie in color until I was probably, 28 or something, because we had a black and white TV.
So you had no
uh,
idea what everyone was talking about.
I didn't know I'd what it was on. I really didn't get it. As I say,
Uh-huh.
excuse
So what was your
Um,
moment?
my moment is back to this refers to your question about the queer coding,
Mhm.
even when you don't know that that's what you're getting. My moment was when Dorothy turns to the three friends of Dorothy and she says to the scarecrow, I think I'm going to miss you most of all.
Mhm.
That always, because I knew I was the scarecrow.
Mhm.
I was the smart one. I was the first one. I was going to be the last one. I was the loyal one. I was not going to give up. And that was a very, sort of gay man having, preferring to be with a single woman than to be with a straight man. It's the
Mhm.
same we're talking about. He loved her and she loved him for it. And I, on a certain way to code, over to Dr. Seuss, my heart got 3 times larger that day.
Yeah.
Whenever I saw that scene, it made me sad, but made me happy.
Mm.
It made me sad that they were saying goodbye, but made me happy that Dorothy could realize his value. And I suppose it probably made me think maybe somebody one day will see my value, even if I have straw sticking out of my shirt and a painted face. Maybe I will be recognized as having the kind of value that Dorothy recognizes in that person.
Mm.
That's what I wanted to be. Don't we all?
And here we are.
And here we are. And here we are.
And I mean that
Gay.
and I mean that really sort of wonderfully, you
That's
know.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. And of course, I did eventually get with the program. I began to see,
Sure.
that when I would go read, there might be 300 people in the audience, and there'd be about 85% women, and the rest would be kids or gay men, and there'd be maybe 3 or 4 straight men who had to put their heads in a paper bag because they didn't want to be recognized as
Mhm.
next. They were too gay adjacent, I guess. Um, but I figured it out
Yeah. And it
eventually.
wasn't as simple as clicking your heel 3 times. You like had
It,
you
it,
put in the work.
oh, I put in the work, but this is not all about me. It's about Elphaba. I'm not going to go into
Well,
my sorry history of figuring things
no, no,
out.
no. But what I find so interesting is like, yes, it is. You just said it's about Alphaba, but I think what a lot of
Yeah.
people don't necessarily know about you is you are tremendously prolific. You have a gajillion books out there, not just adult novels, but YA novels and picture books. And I mean, I only learned recently and cannot wait to get my hands on a copy of Making Mischief, the Maurice Sendak
Oh
appreciation book.
yes. Oh yeah.
I mean, like, you didn't just write Wicked. You didn't just write, the Wicked Years series.
Right.
Your
Well,
well is
I
very deep, Gregory
I,
Maguire.
I think there have been I think I have 42 books over a 45-year period, if I remember correctly, and I'm slowing down a little bit. I've also raised 3 adopted children with my
Yeah.
husband, and I've started and run nonprofits, and for a while I was a college teacher, and I lived abroad, and
This
I've
is
done
about you. It is not just about Alphabet.
but you know what? I love standing behind Alphabet. Sometimes
Mm.
people, especially younger people, say, "What is it like to go into the mall and be recognized?" And I say, the wonderful thing about being in the entertainment business as a writer is that nobody, I mean, unless you're Salman Rushdie or maybe John Updike, or at this point, maybe Margaret Atwood, nobody recognizes you as a writer. You can be totally anonymous. You're not a politician. You're not a performer.
Mhm.
You're a spy. You are Harriet the spy, still in your cloak of invisible ordinariness.
Mhm.
paying attention to the world and taking notes so that you can be more accurate as you try to represent the yin and the yang of it the next time you go back to work. Now, it's equally true that when people mention that I wrote Wicked, they get a kind of a glow on their face, but I can walk out the room and 10 minutes later past this, on the street, past people who were hearing me speak, and they don't recognize me
Right.
because who they were seeing was a green-skinned woman with a tall black hat.
Yeah.
Elphaba will always be more recognizable than a tedious, old, middle-class, white, balding, schlubby Gregory Maguire. That's exactly the way I like it. I mean, I like it cute a little bit from a certain angle, but the lights are low and, and
Right.
as sometimes said, if the perspective's right,
Uh-huh.
but it's a wonderful disguise to be a writer because nobody pays attention to you. You don't wear your talents
Yeah.
outwardly. You wear them inwardly.
You also have been very vocal about sort of buoying Elphaba, and you've named her, but you didn't create her. You sort of you amped her up a bit. You gave her story, or you filled in some story, and then you're letting her
Right.
sort of fly and do her thing, which is, I think, also really special and important. You have this reverence for the character, for the story, and sort of as a shepherd, less so a dictator.
Absolutely. I mean, I do have, banks of lawyers to keep anybody from using my intellectual property without my permission. I won't pretend that I don't. But on the other hand, I really do feel, I don't know whether you happen to have seen, there was an article in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago about the character of the Wicked Witch of the West. It was in the Sunday Arts section.
Oh.
And it was terrific. One of the things I liked about it is that the author traces the iterations of the Wicked Witch of the West in the American consciousness. What did Baum make of her as a one-eyed witch out in the castle of the Winky, in the country of the Winkies? What did MGM make of her when Margaret Hamilton was turned Max Factor Green? What did The Wiz make of her on stage and in the film? That's the iteration of which I know the least. I saw the film, but I don't have deep tissue memories of it. And what did I make of her? And the author did not go on to say, what did Broadway make of her? And what will the movie make of her? That's the implication but what the author stopped by saying, it's where she reaches the mind of Gregory Maguire that she begins to be the person we've been waiting for her to be and the person we need in this culture all along. And I wrote to this person. I think it was probably bad form to write to somebody who has complimented you in the newspaper, but I couldn't stop myself. I said, you have seen, perhaps more adroitly than anybody else that I've seen writing about my work, what it was I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you have also caught that not only was it pertinent 30 years ago, but it was almost prophetic. Look who we have running for president.
I know, it's very alarming. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about too, just sort of the legacy, not just of the story of the Wizard of Oz, but the story of Elphaba as, fighting the resistance. It's like,
right. Yes. Yeah.
it's like, it's unfortunate that it is as important today as it was 30 years ago.
30 years ago, Jason, I thought this book might not actually make it. And then when the play was coming up, I thought the play might not make it because it was so retro, because it was handling things as if they might have been written in the 1950s when I was born. Oh, anything but. It just becomes more and more pertinent with the passing 5-year period.
So funny that you say that, because my story with Wicked, the first time I learned about it was, I don't know how, I'm a musical theater nerd, and when I was a kid, was on a teenager, I was on some mailing list that teachers were on for like New York field trips.
Right.
And it was like a list of all of the shows that were coming to Broadway, and you could select to go see it with your class or whatever. And so one of the shows in this pamphlet was Wicked, and I think it maybe had started performances in San Francisco, but it certainly wasn't in New York yet. And I was like, the description of, what happened after Dorothy dropped in, and the story of, or before Dorothy dropped in, and the story of the Wicked Witch. I was like, this is either going to be a huge hit or it's going to be a flop, and I have to see it. And so
Right.
truly booked tickets and went on a trip to New York because I was like, God only knows what's going to happen with this musical.
Yeah.
And I love this concept so much. I have to go. And here we
Yeah.
are.
And here we are. When I went to San Francisco, where the out of town tryouts were happening, I saw it 5 times in 8 days because I wasn't convinced it was going to make it to New York. And
Wow.
I wanted to be able to remember it for the rest of my life. So I saw it every night and a matinee too in the time that I had before I had to fly home.
Yeah.
Little did I know 21 years later.
Yeah, so special, and what's so incredible that people, I'm sure, don't even realize, of course, is that while the book was a success, in the first 8 years that it was around, never hit the bestseller list.
It's true. And thank you so much for dragging my name through the mud.
Well,
It's true.
the gag of it all is too that Stephen Schwartz has never won a Tony Award, but the joke's on everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like,
No, I know. No, it's true. It sold um, almost 1 million copies in the 8 years before it opened on Broadway.
yeah,
And by most metrics, that's a best-selling book and a best-selling
absolutely.
writer. However, it didn't sell them all in the first flood. It was the iconic sleeper syndrome. People read it and liked it, and bookstores started facing it out because it had a beautiful cover.
Mhm.
And in a way that rarely charts like this for most artists, it sold for about the first 6 years, it sold more every 6-month period than the period before. Usually you have one chance at selling books, and that's the season it comes out. And by the second season, most of your books are remaindered or pulped.
Yeah.
And, you have earned from them what you're going to. And that's how most of my other books have performed.
Sure,
Not
sure,
exactly.
sure. Listen, when you throw 40 some odd books out.
Yep. I've had 3 books that sold over 1 million copies, but Wicked by
amazing.
far has outsold the rest of all my work put together.
I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I'm thinking about what I want to talk to you about.
Right.
Elphaba discovers that she has these powers, and then she learns how to harness them.
Mm-hmm.
When did you discover your own powers, and how did you learn to harness them?
Oh gosh. We will have to talk all day in order to carry any of that. I mean, I knew how to draw. I had a natural talent for drawing. And as soon as I could draw, and I liked to draw and I liked illustrations, as soon as I could draw, by that I mean in kindergarten, and I realized that writing letters was a kind of drawing. It was a sort of drawing of symbols. Actually printing letters was fun too, because it was a kind of drawing. I would draw pictures and write captions. And little by little, in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, the captions got more extensive and more descriptive. And I began to realize I actually didn't have to draw everything in the picture because I could add it in the words. I loved doing that in early grade school.
Wow.
I mean, early grade school. By the time I was 4th grade, I had moved from one school system to another, one Catholic school to another. We moved to a better neighborhood. And I think maybe the nun in charge of the 4th grade class, Sister Mary Perpetua, probably saw A, that I was talented, and B, that I was lonely because I was a new kid in this class.
And she encouraged you to keep going.
She said,
Sister Mary Perpetua.
Mary Perpetua. She did. You got it. And I'm not making that up.
I can't believe that.
Would you write a play that we can put on for Thanksgiving?
Wow.
So it's like I get there in September. By November, I'm writing the class play. It was called The First Thanksgiving. I won't go into it.
Sure. For the best.
But it was, we put it on, and I got, you talked about when did I see? Well, I was picked out by Sister Mary Perpetua. Other nuns and other teachers had already done it before. My parents had looked at my work and smiled. They hadn't actually read it, but they liked that I was industrious and I wasn't getting into trouble. But Sister Mary Perpetua read it and said, okay, we'll mount this. And we put it on. It lasted about 10 minutes. If this were a 2-hour podcast, I would tell you the plot. But suffice it to say that 10 years later, 10 years after I was in 4th grade, I came back to that grade school and I became a teacher. I taught 7th and 8th grade English.
Oh, wow.
My first year out of college. What did I do with the 7th and 8th grade English, the fine literature class, the special class? I took them to New York in a van to see my special readers, my high end readers, to see Stephen Schwartz's show Pippin. So I'm 21, got curly hair like the person playing Pippin, John Rubinstein, and I'm taking 14 eighth graders to see Stephen Schwartz musical. So, however, in the faculty lounge at this Catholic grade school in Midtown Albany, New York, we're sitting around saying, what are we doing? When do we start putting up the Halloween designs and the Thanksgiving designs? And the current fourth grade teacher says, oh, every year we put on this play called The First Thanksgiving. That's kind of been handed down. It was my play. 12 years later, the fourth grade was still putting it on every year. So by the time I was in out of college, I'd already basically written my first novel. It wasn't published yet.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't sold it, but I'd written it. But talk about, you look back at Sister Mary Perpetua, God rest her soul. Even with a name like that, she's probably dead. And you think, we need these people who are not our parents. We need the wise woman in the woods. We need the witch in the tower. We need the cat who will tell you the secret of how to get to the underground kingdom if you make sure to give it half of your fish fillet.
Mm-hmm.
We need these people in our lives. And I have had many of them. So that's probably, in fourth grade, Sister Mary Perpetua said, you can do this. And I did it. And so I kind of got turned on and I began writing fairly seriously then. And I was, to quote Malcolm Gladwell, and the 10,000 hours that it takes in order to become a success at what you do. I entered into my own apprenticeship writing stories in fourth grade, and I wrote constantly until I was in 12th grade, putting in a literal 10,000 hours writing stories and novels. And I have most of them in my closet over behind that door over there.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, and so the body of work isn't surprising. It wouldn't be surprising to young you in retrospect, and wouldn't be surprising to Sister Mary Perpetua.
Well,
you've been writing perpetually since then, and I'm obsessed.
I had. But, I can see our time is coming up, but because this is a gays reading podcast, the truth is that reading fantasies and fairy tales, not just fairy tales, but fantasies like A Wrinkle in Time and Charlotte's Web and the Narnia books and Neverland and Peter Pan and Wendy and the Oz books, whatever I could find, wherever a child managed to escape the drear world, the gray, characterless plain of Kansas, to get to someplace else and find that they were still intact as a person. What better metaphor do we have for how reading helps children survive? Reading helped me survive, and it's part of why I've spent my adult life also writing for children, because I know there are little gay boys and little gay girls and little kids with every kind of debility and fear and trauma out there who need to see themselves in fiction and need to know if Meg Murray in A Wrinkle in Time can survive the Tesseract and save her brother, I can survive the Mean Girls in sixth grade and get to seventh grade.
It's so important. Thank you for sharing. I really love that and appreciate it. Elfie is coming out in March of 2025. I have to have you back to talk about that. We didn't even touch on that.
Absolutely. Yes, it's probably premature to touch on it now. I have to go make my bed a few more times.
You have to make your bed. One final thing. This episode is coming out the week that the movie comes out, the week that part one of the movie comes out. Okay. The book obviously has been a great success. The musical introduced so many people to the book. This is going to introduce so many young people, like you were just describing, to the story, to Elphaba. Is there something that you want our listeners to think about, or to take away from their experience seeing the movie this week? What does it mean to you?
Well, it's always all right to lose yourself in a fiction. It's always all right, because eventually the film, the light through the camera goes dark, curtain comes down, the book reaches its final page, and you are done with the fiction, but you are not just, are you still yourself, you're a little bit stronger, you're a little bit larger. you're a little bit larger of spirit and sympathy than you were before you started. I do believe that, which is why at the age of 70, I still read every day because I don't want to stop perpetually getting larger of spirit and of soul and of heart.
I love that so much. Of mind and of soul and of heart and of courage. Gregory Maguire, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Gay Jason. It's been a real pleasure. I do feel like if I were in the city where you are, that I would say, let's have lunch, let's have a glass of wine. But
one day we'll find each other in the same place, and I can't wait.
It's been like having a glass of wine without it's been effervescent enough for champagne.
Yes. And if I was Rosie, I wouldn't have sung along, but we would have still run out at intermission and we would have kibitzed over wine across the street.
Oh, the terrible politics of the time and the need to protect our children, both of which we felt very, very strongly about.
And still do, I'm sure. Gregory, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
I am so excited to have today's guest gay reader. You might know him from the national tour of Elf as Buddy the Elf. You might know him from a commercial that you've seen on the television. You might know him from Scruff in West Hollywood. But you definitely know him from That's a Gay Ass Podcast, the one and only Eric Gay Ass Williams.
That is my legal middle name. And Jason, you actually have seen me on Scruff, more Los Feliz, Silver Lake, not to brag. But she's an East Side slut.
Pardon. I do not know LA at all.
And I forgive you. Just know that I'm a slut wherever I go. That's the most important thing.
Yes, you're a VIP.
I don't know why I immediately went into how slutty I am, but Jason, thank you for that gorgeous intro.
Listen, I want you to live your best life and be your best self, and that is all. Yes.
Also, Elf the musical has not been used in one of my intros in years, and you are, as a theater gay, I feel so seen and safe with you, and a fellow Jewess. So, Jason, it's such an honor to be on your very gay, very good podcast.
This is a long time coming. I've wanted you here for so long, and you have not written a book yet, so I haven't gotten to have you on as an author. So we were waiting for the perfect moment, and even though you're not Idina Menzel, I'm still thrilled to have you.
I say that to myself every day. Even though I'm not Idina Menzel, I should still be happy to be who I am.
Eric, before we get into all things Wicked, because of course you were on the Gregory Maguire Wicked episode.
Huge.
What are you reading? What are you gay reading? I cannot believe you have read a book.
I know, right? She's a literate queen. I actually have been on a long path of not reading for a while, but I was such a nerd in school. I loved reading. It was like my first gay entree was like the Chronicles of Narnia. That being said, I'm currently reading a self-help book because I need help, and it's The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. I literally have like 10 pages left, so even bigger brag. But there's something about a self-help journey and like a really well-written book that affects my whole life. And this book has made me feel so much more positive, and I'm very grateful for my girl, Gabby.
Are you taking notes in the margin? Are you journaling whilst reading?
What I do is I'll either make a note, like a notes app on my phone, or I will dog tag a page that really speaks to me, because I find that as a neurotic Jewess, I have a lot of self-talk that can be really detrimental to how I feel about myself and what I'm doing. And whenever a book like this teaches me to change my pattern, I like really try to internalize that. And if I feel like I'm not going to just remember it, that's when I like dog tag or notes app on phone. Yeah.
That's called inherited trauma.
Baby, it's inherited, it's generational, and I'm here to tell the tale. I very much have that. If I can butter your biscuit, I think it's so smart the way that you have these incredible authors come on, and then the gays talk about what they're reading. With it's just like it's really, really good. And I know as a podcast host myself, the hustle that goes into this, and any chance I get to tell another host how good their podcast is, I think you're really killing the game, and it's so smart, and I'm so honored for a Wicked episode. Truly.
Listen, thank you for saying what you said about the guest gay readers. But my sort of why that came to be is because I'm a late in life reader. And the more I started talking to friends about books, the more people were like, oh, I read. Oh, I've just read this. Oh, I've been meaning to get to this book. And it's so many more people are readers than you ever realized. One of our mutual guests, the lovely and very handsome James Scully, was reading 2 books at a time. Who would have thought?
I find that reading for me is something I think a lot of people feel this way. You wish you had more time to prioritize it. But I think that people like you who really are constantly reading, it is so good for the soul, and it's time that you're not spending on your phone. And I aspire to do more of it because I really, really, really like reading. Was not to sound, a little therapy speaky, but it was like my first like fantasy safe space as a little closeted kid. I was just reading magic, and I was like a Roald Dahl stan. Again, Chronicles of Narnia. I remember Aragon was like a really long fantasy book I read. So yeah, I'm inspired by you and the podcast because I want to get back into reading more as an adult. It's so good for the soul.
2 things. One thing, I always say, if you even just read 5 pages a day, it's more than what you are reading right now.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's not easy to put down your phone. Like, I am constantly fighting that urge to go check my email or who texted me. I need to often put my phone away or on Do Not Disturb or whatever to just like sit down and focus. So it is, even though I've like built up the muscle, it still is very difficult. So
yeah, it's also
don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Well, it's also good. It's been better. Like my sleep has been better when I read before bed, and it's like my mental health is better when I stop thinking about what's on my Instagram feed and start just like focusing, being present on what I'm reading.
Eric Williams, your podcast, That's a Gay Ass Podcast. It is, of course, the podcast that asks, whose fault is it that you're gay?
Who do we blame, babe?
Thank you. I know you finished the whole. I couldn't say that because that's like appropriation. That's podcast appropriation. But I have to say, I would bet all of my shekels that Wicked has made lots and lots and lots of little homosexuals.
Including me. I literally am picturing 8th grade summer, I think summer after 8th grade. I'm doing a musical theater camp, Jason, and they are showing us for the first time the Tony performance of Wicked with obviously Deansy and Kristen doing Defying Gravity. And I watched that Tony performance, like did not blink a single time, felt the molecules in my body align in the gayest way possible, and it truly in that moment reaffirmed and created an even gayer version of me that is sitting in front of you today.
Bless.
What was your first Wicked? When did you first come across Wicked?
I think it was March of, what was that year? 2003.
Yeah.
To see the original Broadway cast.
Whenever I meet someone who saw the original cast, I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity. I feel like I'm meeting someone who like was around when the 10 Commandments were written, Like you were in from the ground up.
I really was. And even more so. So I was like so obsessed with the idea of what this show could be.
Yeah.
I had friends of mine got me for Hanukkah, the year that the show started preview. So in December of 2002, got me a bootleg of a reading of Wicked. And so I knew.
Was it Stephanie J. Block? Who was the alpha?
It was not.
It was
Idina Menzel.
Oh my God.
And the Bach was Gavin Creel.
Oh my God,
I know.
Jason.
I know.
See what's so sad about my life compared to yours is that the gift that I got for Hanukkah was the vocal selections sheet music published fucking book, and you got a like very secret bootleg of a very secret workshop that I didn't even know existed.
I know.
Oh
I
my
know, it was
God,
insane.
I'm so jealous.
Don't be. Don't be.
Well, no, it's like healthy, happy jealousy. I think back to that time when Wicked came out, and like the story that I tell that's brutal is that I listened to the cast recording so many times that by the time I saw the national tour, which was with Stephanie J. Block and Kendra Casabon played Glinda, who is from St. Louis Mo, where I'm from, I couldn't understand a single plot point because I was so busy just like thinking about like the lyrics that they were singing, taking like the set in, the choreography, and I truly could not tell you what the show actually was about besides the fact that there were like witches who belted. And then I did not see Wicked on stage until we're going to say like 15, 20 years later when I'm living in New York City. I was about to move to LA. This is like the final show I saw before I moved.
This is like 5 minutes ago.
Like, yeah, truly 3 years ago. And
my God.
I saw Wicked on Broadway and I was like, oh wow, this show is really good, guys. Like, it makes sense. The plot makes sense. And I was so gagged at how it's such a well-oiled machine. It just is. I could not take it in at 14, 15 years old when I first saw it. And now as an adult, I'm just like, damn.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's such a special piece of sort of theater history.
Yeah.
And like, I do my homework for Gays Reading, and I do consume a lot of That's a Gay Ass podcast because I adore you and I love listening to you. But I don't think I ever scrolled back and listened to episode 1. For curiosity, I listened to the very first episode. I'm sure you don't, but do you remember what you talked about on that first episode?
Is that the one with Ashley Gavin?
It is.
God, I truly don't. I truly
No, that's
don't.
okay. But the irony is you talk about villains.
Oh, yes. Disney villains came up. I remember that.
Yes.
Jafar.
You talk about Jafar and sort of the camp of the villain.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, what Eric and I are about to talk about is the camp of a villain. And not only is she like a villain, she's misunderstood.
Yeah.
And in turn, very like queer. And she's a fucking like beltress. So,
Yeah.
so not only do you relate sort of on a human level to this character as a young queer person, and she's belting her face off, and you're like, wait a minute.
You're like, what's not to fucking be obsessed over? I just want to say I'm so touched that you even thought to go back to listen to the first one, and you being a fan of the podcast and just your support, it truly means the world to me. And the fact that, I mean, we were talking about villains, it really, pings for me, like Elphaba being fully green, Elphaba, again, like you're saying, being misunderstood. Like, who among us as young queer people did not feel like we were essentially an alien amongst other people? And am I allowed to drop that I saw the Wicked movie last week?
Well, yes, you can. That movie comes out this weekend. I'm embarrassed to say you're allowed to say that you saw it and you're allowed to talk about it. And I am very ashamed to tell you I've not even pre-ordered tickets.
That's okay. Be kind to yourself, but you do need to make that happen. As long as it's like in this calendar month, I think.
I need to see it like within a week. Like,
yeah,
I can't.
yeah.
It's gonna happen, but of course it'll be me being like, wait, why does nobody have seats left? It's like, oh right, because all the other homos bought the tickets.
And
2 months ago.
to be fair, speaking of all the other homos, I am married to a homo who made sure within seconds of it going on sale that we had our tickets. So had it not been him, I'd probably be a Jason Blitman who'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna see it within the week. But within the second they went on sale, we had seats for that night. So
Perfect.
I'm excited to see it again, but I got very lucky through a friend, got tickets to the LA premiere screening, and I just like, again, the villain of it all, the backstory of it all. It's like people, I think Elphaba is so misunderstood, and something that I identify with, if we can get a little deep into Elphaba's herstory, is that she is essentially born to a dad who kind of treats her like shit, and while my parents treated me very well, she was treated poorly because she was different, and I feel like I was definitely treated in a way that was not the best for what I needed. simply because my parents didn't understand me. And so while of course they were well intentioned, I was a gay kid amongst four boys in a Jewish family in Missouri. So like I really I think even just hearing the music as a kid understood her feeling so like the odds were stacked against her. And then and like thank God the movie is so good and just so great at giving a voice to that experience. And I think Cynthia Erivo is, you know, the perfect person to perform that. Is talk about the vocals, talk about the acting, just like it's a sleigh. It's a sleigh.
This is like the gayest thing ever. I desperately wanted Idina Menzel to sign my poster. And I knew she didn't come out of the stage door after the show.
Sure.
So I waited at the stage door before the show to catch her on her way in.
I'm gagged. I'm so gagged.
Standing at the stage door, waiting in the snow, mind you. But I'm waiting at the stage door, and out comes the stage manager or whoever with the like at this performance board. And it said, at this performance, the role of Glinda will be played by, and it was an understudy. And at the time, it was Jennifer Laura Thompson playing Glinda. It was not Kristen Chenoweth. And I see the understudy coming to the stage door for work. And I, because I'm a little musical theater gay, knew who she was and what she looked like. And so I said to her, oh my God, I'm so excited to see you go on. I just saw the board come out. She was like, that's so crazy. I like just got the phone call that I'm going on.
You knew more than the cast knew.
And I have to say, she was incredibly brilliant. And I was like, this girl's going to be a star. And it was Megan Hilty.
Standing ovation, a piece of herstory, and that little girl grew up to be Megan Hilty is the best way to end any story. Even if Megan Hilty is no part of any of my stories, I'm going to say, and that ended up being Megan Hilty.
Grew up to be Megan Hilty.
Even if she's not even a part of the story. That's incredible. Mazel tov.
So, I mean, that was what started my obsession with hearing other people do a riff or sing a song or do the show. Because, like, once there were replacements coming in, and that was sort of the beginning of, not the beginning of the internet, like, of course not. But it was sort of the beginning of us, our generation, like, really being online.
And like,
I
seeking
remember
bootlegs. Like, it was very bootleg heavy.
Bootleg, like, the LimeWire recording of it. Of Sekon Sengblo singing Define Gravity changed my life.
When you texted me before this that we were going to talk about our favorite Alphaba riffs, Sekon Sengblo came up in my mind. I'm truly serious because it was, I think, one of the first experiences of like someone making it her own. And there was a singular growl that she did. There was such a like beautiful strength and obviously delicious belting. Sekon was huge for me. I do think that like origin story when it comes to riff love is, say it with me girlies, Shoshana Bean. I think that
That's not what I was gonna say.
Were you gonna say Eden?
I was.
So Eden is huge because of Fiero. Wait, what?
For me, it's feeling things I've never felt. She hits an F sharp.
I've never felt.
Yes,
and
that
actually,
one.
And actually, I think
me.
it was Fiero. I think that might have been the Eden Espinosa one. Shoshana, if I may go to another riff source, is Seth Rudetsky had her go. It's Godspell. There was something like a. And so that made me like really Shoshi fangirl. And then just like hearing her story about being, you know, like a standby, and then her what do they call bootlegs for slime tutorials?
The slime tutorial.
Hearing Shoshana's slime tutorials, oh my God, there was such the riffs are so clean. Let's be clear though, I do give Eden huge props. I feel like Eden and Shoshana were huge for me. Eden, my entry for Eden was Brooklyn, Once Upon a Time.
Yes, of course.
But now because I'm a gay person talking about Wicked, I feel like I want to come up with like more niche. Oh, well, you go. I need you to hear yours.
Well, so I have 3 faves.
Okay, give it to me.
I've seen Wicked way too many times. It's embarrassing.
Good.
So I've seen it a few times on Broadway, but I also went to school in Chicago when the Chicago production was playing.
Anna Gasteyer.
I didn't see Anna Gasteyer.
Okay, then you saw who?
I saw Christy Cates. I saw Dee Racioli. I saw, the list is endless. But it was like a party trick for me to go and win the lottery and like go when family was in town or go on a date or go like I saw it so many times. And I have to tell you, my 3 favorite Elphibas of all time.
I'm ready.
Stephanie J. Block.
Huge.
Incredible. Lindsay Mendez.
Oh, that's a good one.
And Lily Cooper.
I'm glad you brought up.
I saw those are the 3. Those are my favorite 3.
I'm really, really jealous of all 3, but I'm really like, I saw SJB, but I did not. I wish I'd seen Lily Cooper. I think like we need to address how, while we love Wicked so much, it is fully insane that there were only really 2 Black women who played Elphaba. Say Constang Blow and Lily Cooper, and did anybody else?
And they were standbys.
And they were standbys, and exactly. So like, and so obviously Cynthia Erivo doing the movie is incredible, but it's so interesting when you look at the like. I don't know if you saw that red carpet picture where they had Elphaba, they had Cynthia stand with a lot of the past Elphabas. And it's very like, oh, well.
I didn't see that. And that's, I honestly, I know what that looks like in my mind. And
exactly. And so it's just like when I think about you singing Lily Cooper, I'm like, damn, like it's no surprise to me that she was incredible. And I just feel like, you know, shouting out that fact is important because it is really insane that a 20+ year show has that legacy. I really find it to be, especially about a fucking girl who's painted green, about feeling othered.
The story of a person of color.
Literally. So let's not address that.
Yeah.
But wow, you got to see some really good ones. Wow.
But speaking of super niche, again, knowing that we were going to have this conversation, and I'm so excited to send this to you when we get off of this.
Yeah.
I stumbled upon this girl. Her name is Emily Schulteis.
Okay.
She was the Elphaba standby on the 2nd national tour. And when I tell you, it is the best acted Wizard and I and Defying Gravity I've ever seen. I could not believe it. I was like, I don't know who this girl is. I'm a fan. I'm a stan. I would watch this over and over again. She was so good.
Oh, I can't wait for you to send that to me.
People could sing their face off and no one cares about the acting necessarily.
Right.
But when both happens, it is magical.
I did a show with a girl who her dream was always to play Elphaba, and man, she has been in it for the long haul, auditioning, and she ended up, I think, on the 2nd national tour being like maybe in the ensemble and then like the 2nd understudy. And her name is Marie Aife. I can't really pronounce. It's Eife.
Yes, I know who she is.
Yeah, so I finally, when she went on,
she used to date a friend of mine.
Oh, love that. She's so talented, so great. And when she went on for Elphaba on that tour, she of course I looked up the slime tutorials, and she just like sounded incredible. It's such a cool legacy to say you're a part of, to like be able to play that part. And God, I love any girlina who has played Elphaba. God bless you, because it does not seem easy.
Another good riff is "I'd be so happy I could melt" and going up.
I'd be so
happy
I could melt.
That's the one.
God, I love it so much.
Can I tell you again, gays reading podcast? There are compilation videos on YouTube that are like 15 minutes long of the same people singing the same riff over and over again, and I sat and watched all 15 minutes of that.
Good. No,
and I wanted more.
I am truly married to the gayest man imaginable, and at any time of day on a Wednesday, you will hear a compilation like that ringing through the halls of my small
God,
home.
Obsessed. Courtney, take your break.
Courtney, take your break.
Wait, I'm wearing pink and green. Did you see that?
Elfie, you're green. I am.
Eric Williams, I could sit and gush about Wicked and riffs all day, every day. I don't know how I'm going to cut this conversation down to a brief Wicked experience on gays reading. But listen, like, it is Wicked week. People are going to have to deal.
Any chance to gay out about Wicked is huge, but any chance to gay out on Gays Reading is a very good day for this gay ass girlina. Thank you, Jason, for having me on, and bless you for doing the Lord's work.
Thank you. Wicked, it is not your fault that you made everybody gay, but
It didn't help.
It didn't help. Okay, bye.
Bye.
I have a guest gay reader on every episode. And for this iconic Wicked episode, I was like, I have to have a guest gay icon.
Oh
and
my
I am basically peeing in my pants that you're here with me, Eden Espinosa. You are a gay icon. You played gay icons.
I love being a gay icon. I will own it. Every other time I will deflect and be self-deprecating, but not this one. This title I take. Mother is mothering, all of it. So yeah, I'm here for it all. Gay icon. I crown myself.
Oh my God. Amazing. So my guest gay reader on this episode, his name is Eric Williams, and he hosts a podcast called That's a Gay Ass Podcast. He's amazing. The podcast is amazing. And every episode he asks his guest, whose fault is it that you're gay?
Okay.
And so obviously it's no one's fault. But I joked with him. I was like, the amount of little homos running around out there where Wicked made them gay, and more specifically, Eden Espinosa riffs made them gay.
I love that. What an accomplishment for me.
So question one, because he and I talk about this, because we talk about some of our favorite musical moments in Wicked. And for me, imprinted on my brain is the iconic Eden, and I'll stand there with the wizard feeling things I've never felt riff.
Right.
How did that come to be? We have to know.
Okay. So story time. This is, I'm the standby for Idina Menzel. When you originate something, everything's tailor-made to your voice and, pockets of things that are comfortable for you, keys and all that kind of stuff. And Wizard and I, in particular, sit in a very weird place in my voice. And so I naively asked Stephen Arimas one time, and it hadn't gone on. And I was like, is there any way that when I go on, the keys can be different? And he was like, no, no, that's not possible. I was like, okay, great. So, I being the standby, I always just wanted to be ready. So especially in the beginning,
Well, and not to interrupt you, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but when you say standby, y'all, Eden Espinosa is the OG standby. The only other human that the world has heard sing the songs is Idina Menzel.
At the time, yeah.
Right, at the time. So that was a moment where you were like, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, sorry. I just for the children, I needed to clarify.
Yes, of course. And a standby means that you do just that. You're paid to be in the building and be there in case something happens. And you're the first to go on if she's sick or on vacation. And then if you don't go on, the understudy goes on. So, I watched every single preview because I didn't get that much rehearsal time. So I would keep track of blocking and stuff. But once the show was open, we had a rehearsal room at the top floor that the stage was taped out. So sometimes I would do the show along with the show. And once I was familiar, I would just be in my dressing room and sing along sometimes just to keep my voice ready and in shape. Sometimes riffs came out of me harmonizing with her. So sometimes they're at third above because I'm or I would just pop up and I was like, oh, that feels easier. So a lot of my riffs came out of doing that and out of it being in an easier place in my voice. If it was just a couple of notes higher. And sometimes that's the case for people's, sweet spots fit in different places. And so that's how that came to be.
If anyone wants to know what was happening in the rehearsal room upstairs at the Gershwin, just YouTube Eden's name and you'll come across a bunch of them, I'm sure. This obviously is the Wicked episode. It has held such a legacy. You were in the show 7 years in a row. Insane. So it's been was a part of your life for a very long time. Is there anything that you would say Alphabet taught you?
Yes. I did it from ages 25 to 32. And
Wow.
left, I would leave to go do other things. And then I
Mhm.
did a contract every year for 7 years with breaks, obviously. But I think every time I came back to it, I learned something new about myself. And especially my like act 2 alphabet. I think earlier on I connected to my act 1 alphabet very strong
Mhm.
because I had similar experiences like bullying and people making fun of me and playing tricks on me or pretending to include me in a group, and then we're all going to plan to wear a certain outfit, and then the next day I'm the only one that shows up, or we're going to wear Halloween costumes to school and I'm the only one that shows up in a Halloween costume that is not a sexy cheerleader like Humpty Dumpty. Like
Literally Mean Girls plot point.
yeah,
Like, oh
100%.
my God.
So I really, really identified with her.
Yeah.
But I think, that song, Defying Gravity, like the older I got, was more and more resonant because it's just like, take the leap, be yourself, be the different person, be loud about the things you're passionate about. I'm happy that people still want to hear me sing that song. People still want to hear
Mhm.
me sing wicked songs. And it's if I allow myself to be present and quiet with how it resonates with me presently at any given moment, it's very strong.
Mhm.
And it's very I don't know, it's just it's always a lesson. Sometimes I'm not ready to have it, so I'll just sing this. You know what I mean? It's like I have to be able to let it penetrate my soul. Yeah, I think most of all, it's be unapologetically you. Be loud about the things you have convictions of on
Yeah. It's
about.
really incredible like what music can do for us. Every once in a while in my head I'll hear the end of I'm Here from The Color Purple.
Mm,
I'm gonna
yeah,
take a deep breath, gonna hold my head up, gonna put my shoulders back, look them
yeah,
straight in the eye. Right. Like it's just this empowering thing that music can inspire you.
yeah.
And it's time to trust your instincts, close your eyes and leap, I think is also super important. My life mantra is leap and the net will come.
Yeah,
And that's I mean, I guess alphabet too.
yeah, for sure.
We're tight that way.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll keep talking about Wicked in a sec, but I have to ask, because we're on Gays Reading, you are the guest gay icon reader. Eden Espinosa, what are you reading?
I have a like an on and off love affair with reading because I think it's partially because of my attention span
Yeah.
and our attention span to really like not just read the words and go, wait, what did I just read? And go, you have to,
Hmm.
but to really like take in a story. And it's actually one of my favorite things to let a story like engulf you when an actual
Yeah.
book, not a Kindle, not a like an actual book. So I just started reading again and making it a daily, even if it's just for like 15 minutes. It's one of my like new let's find down. So I am
Yes.
reading Court of Thorn and Roses right now.
Yes.
And what's crazy is somebody recommended that book to me like 2 years ago,
Hmm.
and I bought it. And I was like, I love sets, so I bought the whole set. And I had been reading chapters 1 through 3 over the last 2 years, like literally. And then
Yeah.
I couldn't get into it. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but there was something about it that it.
Yeah.
And recently, people would be like, just get past, just trust me. And yes. So I'm almost done with that first one.
So
Um,
fun.
yeah.
I love that. It's so funny because whenever I tell someone, like, I'm going to ask you what you're reading, and it could be truly, literally anything, it does not have to be a book.
Book.
Be- well, because like when someone reflects on just reading as a thing, we realize that we're actually doing it every single day, whether it's a
Sure.
novel or not. And yet, every single person still wants to say a book, even if
Right.
they're like what you just said. Like, I'm not a huge reader. It took me a minute to get into it. I love when a story can envelop me. But I'm like, girl, you're probably reading your emails every day, and that isn't.
Yeah.
But you really want to sit here and talk about a book that you're reading, which I think is so cool
Yeah.
and really speaks to sort of the power of what sitting in your bed before you go to sleep reading Court of Thorn and
Yeah.
Roses will do.
Yes. Yeah.
So fun. I have not picked it up yet, but I've heard
It's
it's
fun.
delicious.
Yeah, it's one of those worlds that it takes you a minute to get to know the places and the characters and how they're all related. And then there's some links. There's little sweet.
Well, it's funny because when you said I love sex, I thought you said you love sex. And I was like, oh, well, that's why you bought the books, of course. I guess it could go either way. It's fine. So funny. So thinking about your career, and I didn't joke about you being a gay icon because you are a freaking gay icon, but you've played Maureen in Rent. You've played Alphabet and Wicked. You've played Lampika. You've played even Trina in Falsettos. Like, she's not necessarily a gay icon, but like she's a part of a queer iconic story.
That's right.
I didn't even realize like how queer your career has been.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It means a lot to me. It's funny because, during the pandemic, when we were really starting to talk about the queer community, we're getting to know more about non-binary and trans people. And a friend of mine who's non-binary said, somebody had called me queer. And my sexual orientation is not, although I'm open and curious about it, but I've never, dabbled in that path. So I said, what do they mean, like, when they said that I'm queer, even if I'm like, I've never dated women or a queer person or anything like that. And they were like, the way you present yourself, the spirit of who you are, and the way that you just advocate for the community, are involved in the community. Like, for some people that makes you queer. And I was like, work. I really was like, I love that. And I just I always want people to feel seen and represented. And having played queer characters before, it was something when I did Maureen, and conversations that I would have with Michael of Michael Greif, I don't ever want a queer person to look at me and go, oh, please, this straight person up there, just because there are times that I've been in the audience going, I don't believe you. And whether that's your own judgment or you didn't have chemistry with the person, I don't know. That's not for me to say, but I just never wanted anyone to question that it was real. And it's important to me. And I'm happy that people regard me in such a way from the queer community and my work. And that makes me proud because I just want people to feel, I want everyone to be able to see themselves in art at any point, So that's important to me.
And it doesn't hurt that you're talented AF. There's that too. Okay, so why do you think Wicked has the legacy that it has? I've just told the story to both Gregory Maguire and Eric Williams how when I first learned about Wicked, it was before it opened on Broadway, and I was like, this is either going to be a huge hit or a huge flop. I have to go see it right now. And my little gay ass from South Florida got on a plane at 15 years old with my dad, and we went to go see, and I bought house seats to Wicked through a friend of a friend. And I saw the original cast because I was like, who knows what's going to be?
Yeah.
Now here we are. Why do you think it's sort of stood the test of time as it has?
I think everybody felt that at the beginning. We were all like, we don't know if this is the thing. Even reviews were mixed. But I think ultimately what it is it's I think it's several things. It's the references and the world that America in particular is so connected to because of the Wizard of Oz and because of the original stories and the original movie. So it's familiar. It's something that we all know. And then it gives us this, as Joe Mantello would say, if the camera would pan over here while this story is happening that we all know, we get an inside track as to what's going on over there. And beyond that, there's these universal qualities of the story of friendship, of sisterhood, of feeling othered, political things happening in our environment that we feel out of control and helpless, or giving us courage to stand up to the man. There's so many the feeling of like peer pressure, even of once somebody sees you or pins you as something, do I have to keep living up to that? Or can I break away from what people think I am? Or people think I'm going to be this, then fine, I'm going to be this. You want me to be this? Here we go. You know, there's so many human themes that I think people, and that's why I think the fan base is so varied, that parents can go with their kids and have an equally a profound experience. And so I think that's why it will continue. And now with the movie, an even wider audience and an even younger audience, it's just wild that all these years later, I remember I was talking to a friend the other day who was in the original cast, and I was like, remember when we used to ask like when the movie's coming out, and they like, it's not coming out anytime soon. We need it to. The show is, you know, the show is doing its thing. And it's crazy to think 21 years later that now today's the day. Like it's here, and it's wild. It's
so wild.
Yeah.
You've said it publicly in other places before, but I will say I can't wait till we see your Madame Morrible one day.
They will be in. I'm so excited.
So fun. You're probably most excited to be like, I'm gonna sit backstage for most of the show. See y'all.
That's right.
So people can find you're on Instagram. You have a bunch of your music. You have solo albums. You're on original cast recordings on the Spotify and all over the places. I have to say, searching for Brooklyn on Spotify validated my telling my husband that I have to keep all of my physical cast recordings because it's not there.
It's not on any streaming.
But I have it. I have the CD.
Yes. I'm so happy.
It's like reasons like that I haven't gotten rid of like a super old laptop, because it's just the laptop is basically dead, but I know I have music on there. Where else can the children find you? Is there did I miss anything?
No, you didn't. I mean, I have a website. I'm thinking about amping up my TikTok. I have some idea. I just want it to be specific, but yeah, Instagram is the most that I'm on and stuff.
Yeah. I'm excited to see whatever I saw the glimmer in your eyes when you talked about TikTok. Like, I'm not even on TikTok, but I think I might need to be.
I have some ideas, but yeah.
Oh God, amazing. Well, Eden Espinosa, thank you for being my first guest gay icon. Yay! I hope you enjoy the rest of Court of Thorn and Roses. I can't wait. Thank you for talking about the legacy of Wicked. Happy Wicked.
Happy Wicked.
Gregory, Eric, Eden, thank you all so much for being here. Everyone, happy Wicked week. Have a wonderful weekend. See you next week. Bye.